Going on week 12 of the Globero Kings' second season of the Unknown Pokemon Draft League, we've got our matchup against the Oak Ridge Okie Dogies. Now, our Season 1 battle against Coach Claire was a heater, and you can be assured that we're running back with another fancy schmancy, heatsy deetsy kind of replay for week 12 of the second season. Let's break right on into this with one of my favorite drafts being shown off this season, starting with the first pick of Terra Hisuian Decidueye. Now this thing gets Scrappy on top of a spammable stab fighting move in triple arrows, which does 10 trillion things. It can flinch you and crit you and lowers your something and kills your dad if you eat tea on a Monday. It just does everything, that move. And with Scrappy, you can spam it with pretty much no regard outside of like Fairy and Psychic types. So it makes a really nice mon. It's a little slow, but you can just slap a scarf on it if you want to just triple arrow through the enemy team. On top of that, of course, it gets great grass moves. It gets plenty of fighting stuff. It keeps Shadow Sneak and some other ghost type moves from its Colossian form. Is it Colossian? No, Alolan form. That's my mistake there. A really cool mon. The one issue that I'm going to have with recapping this team is that Claire drafted so bonkers that I don't even know all the things about all these mons. There are just mons on here that I am not that familiar with because they are niche as all hell, and this is why I love this draft so much. Moving on in is something that you know probably more than me if you watch a lot of VGC. I'm only occasional partaker in the VGC land, but Indeedee, you know what it's here to do. It's here to run Psychic Surge, maybe Heal and Wish ya, or shoot at you with its Expanding Force gun. And it does that real darn well. Mon is a menace, and it's a real good enabler. This was, I believe, supposed to be a Tapu Lele, but that got sniped out by Moose's first pick, which, if only somebody had warned poor Claire. Regardless, Indeedee is a monster. I reached out to Coach Claire for a comment on this team, and she was mentioning how crazy that Expanding Force is on top of Psychic Terrain and a pair of choice specs. Menacing Mon, even if it's that adorable. Next up, the GOAT, Monkey Dory. Now, I'm going to be real with you. I know that Monkey Dory's got that big fat chance to poison with like 30% on top of 30% with a Sludge Wave Toxic Chain. I think it gets, does it get Technician, or that might be Pheasant depending? I don't know what this thing does. I know it gets like Energy Ball. I might get D-Gleam. Monkey Dory is an enigma in itself, and it makes a beautiful draft pick. Gotta take one of the loyal three to rep that Okie Dokie pack. Love that pick. I love his weird flappy triangular arms and his tabby toes. Great mon. Low kicks. This is a demon. I could talk about this thing for hours, no cap. That Banded First Impression just it's like a black hole changing the space-time of the team builder here. This thing shows up, and if you're weak to bug, you're gone. If you're not a quad resist, you're still shaking in your little boots because it's hitting you as neutral with that tinted lens. This thing can do crazy. It can like one-shot, I'm pretty sure it can one-shot Ogerpon. Maybe not even with rocks, but definitely with rocks. And that's my Ogerpon Hearthflame who's hitting it neutral instead of a weakness. It's a nasty thing. It gets that unresistible knockoff. And you might think that with this 102 attack, it's not that big a threat, but you'd be wrong. This thing is gnarly. U-turn for momentum. I think it gets like close combat for fight and stab. It's just a menace and a half, though. That first impression is crazy. Runerigus up next, the status extraordinaire. It gets like Thunder Wave. Actually, no, it doesn't get Thunder Wave. Of course, I speak it wrong on the first time, but it gets Will-O-Wisp, it gets Destiny Bond, it can Shadow Ball you, Earth Power you. You see a lot of custom shenanigans with it. I think it gets spikes as well. And luckily, since we're not playing actual Pokemon, we're just on Showdown, you don't have to go and do a triple back spring and sacrifice your dad while you're underneath a rocky undercropping in some random town. Because why the hell do they do that? I don't know. Moving on, Garchomp. Oh, and Alola Marowak. Get back in your box, Alola Marowak. Garchomp right here. Now, you see him get run more as a tank, but you can't forget that he has Scale Shot now. He can boost up, and if you're not ready, he can like dance on you real hard. He can Scale Shot. He can Swords Dance. I mean, that Earthquake Breaking Swipe pack is going to give you a nasty awakening. He gets like all the Fang moves. Alternatively, you can bring Stealth Rocks and that double tanked up Rocky Helmet Rough Skin combination. He's something to be worried about, and Seeing as my draft also has no ice type, there's no obvious way to dispatch this thing, making it a real threat to my team. Now Alolan Marowak can come out. And this is another mon where I can't tell you all too much. I know it's got a signature move called Shadow Bone. What does it do? I forgot. Maybe I'll put it up here. Maybe I won't. But what I can tell you is that this thing bonks like crazy. You give this thing its thick club and it knows what to do. It just smacks you on the head. It's hitting numbers that make my bonker, Ogerpon Hearthflame, look like a pansy. Doubling an attack stat is absolutely no joke, and it slows all hell out like a base 35 move speed. But you know what? If like somebody like Indeedee shows up beforehand and sets a trick room for it, there's nothing to do except watch your team get holes like a piece of Swiss cheese in a rat carnival. This thing is a real cool mon. Darmanitan, I'll be real, I know what Galarian Darmanitan does. Regular Darmanitan, I don't even know how Zenmon works. I forget if it starts in it or enters it or what. All I know is that this thing can put a Scarf on and Flare Blitz the hell out of you. I also know that I did play with one of these in Gen 5. He's a real goat, an OG goat. Pavilion Juno coming in next. Now this thing has got tinted lens again, if I'm not mistaken, but the real thing you're scared about here is the compound eyes. This thing hits you with that sleep powder at like 98% accuracy, and it's just bad. It starts quiver dancing, starts hitting those nearly perfect accuracy, or maybe even above perfect accuracy hurricanes on you, bug buzzes, and then all of a sudden you're reduced to tatters by this beautiful moth. You can also mix and match them pretty colors and make it thematic, which I always appreciate. I like a little bit of customization. Maybe we'll see somebody like me drafting a Furfrou for that reason next season. Probably not, though. It's Furfrou. Regardless, the only thing that really holds this mon back is that bug flying typing, and I guess a kind of poor stat line as far as bulk goes. This thing would love to not have to wear boots every day in favor of like a sash, but still a threatening mon and something you gotta keep in mind. The Powdon out next. It's got Roar, Slack Off, Earthquake. It's got that Solid Bulk and Sandstream. I think that allows just that nice chip. It enables Black Sludges or Leftovers on other teams. And especially with the next two mons up on this draft, it's definitely solid on this team. This team is like it's a sneaky little sand team, because you wouldn't really think it, but a lot of mons are immune. Mrs. Juno over there might even get Overcoat as one of its abilities. I might be thinking about a different early route bug though. Regardless, I love the Hippo. What else can I say? Grunk, grunk, grunk. Grunk, grunk, grunk. Grug. You gotta love this, especially with Hippowdon right in front of him. Good old gruggy Regirock can become just a monster of a tank in there. He's got Body Press and Iron Defense. He's got to rely on Rest for recovery, but this thing, if it's in the right position, into the right mons, it can just sit there. It's got Toxic still because we're in Nat decks. It can rip Stone Edges into you. It's a real good mon, and you know what? I just love Regirock. Every now and again, I find myself looking at one of those compilations of all of its anime cries, and it just puts a little smile on my face. I love Greg. Finally, one of the funniest last picks possible is Iron Boulder, ripping a blazing speed stat and a crazy attack stat on top of tons of good moves. You've got Mighty Cleave, which bypasses protection and is an accurate physical rock move. I mean, that alone makes you a good mon, period. The Zen Headbutt is also nice. You get something like Grass. I think you might get Trailblaze, if I'm not mistaken. I think everybody gets Trailblaze these days. On top of the Photosynthesis as well, you're just a blazing fast mon, because you can run that speed or physical attack. It's got Swords Dance. It's got like Earthquake. It's a real good mon. It's weird to see something like that going in the last pick slot. But man, oh man, if it doesn't put a little smile on my face. I love this team. It's one of my favorite drafts of the current season. And without further ado, let's get into what I did to make preparations for this beautiful team. Alrighty, getting right on in to what my team looks like this week. We are starting with Slitherwing, my goat, with the Papaya Berry, so that we can flip that Iron Boulder matchup on its head. Possibly live something on a switch and get that first impression off. Granted, there's no Focus Sash, or just to live one extra Zen headbutt while duking it out. We're running First Impression, U-Turn, Close Combat, and Will-O-Wisp, and that First Impression is good. It's why we're here. It's honestly the reason that I love Slitherwing so much. It's such a funny move to me for some reason. It can just straight up OHKO both of these mons, Low Kicks and Mr. Iron Boulder. And Low Kicks does hit us with a faster First Impression or knockoff or whatever, but both of those require Tinted Lens to activate, bringing it to just a neutrality. And Slitherwing can take any of that with 252 EV. Will-O-Wisp is also, of course, nice for a lot of those mons. Quite a few physical attackers on that team. U-Turn for momentum and close combat to pick up the gaps, just with a nice strong stab move. Next up, we got Ogrehon, Hearth Flame, ripping, of course, the Hearth Flame max and Mold Breaker ability. Jolly Nature plus speed minus his attack. Running a little bit of HP for what reason is lost to time. I promise at some point I'll start writing down what these EV investments are actually for and putting some calcs up on the screen. But right now, no such luck. Spiky Shield is going to be nice for Mr. Low Kicks. It lets me not worry about that First Impression whatsoever. Hornleech and Ivy Cudgel smack a lot of this team for solid damage, OHKOing many of them. The Ivy Cudgel commons like Decidueye and Low Kicks, Pavilion there, they get bodied by this. And then neither of the other guys like it. Hornleech. And Stomping Tantrum, especially when being used with Spiky Shield. If you're expecting a switch, you can use Spiky Shield and fail it to get that Stomping Tantrum boost. Or you can, if you have the bulk, you can double it up and try to fail. It lets me hit those ground weak mons on the team really hard without having to bring my ground type in Clodsire. Mesprit coming up here, debuting this season. Picked up after week 9, I believe, in lieu of Tapu Bulu. Running a Choice Scarf for that Trickery Dickery. Now this Choice Scarf is just here to try to sabotage, trying to make maybe Low Kicks not able to use that First Impression as easily if it's not running another choice item. Trying to lock Regirock into an inopportune status move, same with kind of the rest of them. Trying to perma Q-dance that Pavilion or make Runerigus do who knows what forever. It's just here to disrupt. It also gives me a pretty fast option into Iron Boulder if I want to make that thing a little bit more predictable. Next up, Rocks is just good. It hits a couple of these mons for super effective damage, and it breaks those sashes, especially on a mon like Pavilion. It lets me get that information of whether it's running boots or a sash, so I know how to approach it a little bit better. And the Mystical Power and Dazzling Gleam helps a little bit offensively. Mystical Power, of course, it's like not being necessarily the best offensive type, but if Mystical Power keeps going and going, it's a +1 special attack on top of 70 base power, I want to say. 90 base accuracy, which is an idea, but you know what, with a Scarf, if I'm outspeeding everything, and I Mystical Power, Mystical Power, Mystical Power, Mystical Power, you get that metronome effect where you're just getting more powerful and you ramp up and you ramp up and you ramp up. So it's a potential win condition or threat in itself. Next up, we got the Hooper, another Psychic type on the field, this time running the Slackberry. We've got the Endure as well, and this is just to help us with those Ghost Weak / Psychic, or not Psychic type moves. But it's here to help us just outspeed mons. I believe a +1 Hoopa outspeeds an Iron Boulder and allows a Shadow Ball almost OHKO. It's an OHKO after Rocks, which Mesprit can help put down. HP Water, like on paper, it almost looks like it makes sense where you're hitting so many, like you're hitting 6 out of 7 of the mons on screen right now for super effective damage, but I think Hoopa does just have better ways. So this is a crazy move to be bringing. It's not like there's somebody like Camerupt or Colossal where I'm trying to hit that quad weakness to water. But you know what? It's here and it's Peem, so it goes. Terra Fairy. Terra Blast, it notably helps me live that knockoff out of Low Kicks with much more ease than I normally would. Means that Tinted Lens starts activating, and it just lets me hit the Garchomp for super effective damage. Perhaps even a OHKO, if I'm not mistaken. Stacky up next, Chesto Resto for this week, like I think it was last week or the week before. Impish Nature with a full attack load and a plus defense nature because why not? We just ball. Iron Defense, Heavy Slam, Body Press, and Rest. Now this Heavy Slamma is, of course, specifically for Iron Boulder. With a Terra Flying, you can predict a close combat into the stack attack. It's a little mashup fishy, because if they predict the Terra Flying and hit you with that Mighty Cleave, then stack attack, no more stack attack is bad news day. It also lets you slam Mr. Grug, Reggie Rock. And Terra Flying lets it deal with some of these other threats. It lets it resist both of his Sigil stab types, get immunities to the ground out of those other three. And then with Garchomp, you can kind of fish it around if you think they might scale shot to predict. It's a little Mickey, but you know what? We ran it. Can't undo that. Next up, we got Tornadus T here with Leftovers Regenerator set, and you'll see that we're running 252 HP, 110 special attack, and 4 special defense. Now, I don't know where the rest of my EVs went. I can't tell you. Maybe they flew off to Winnebago or Tobago or whatever that country down south is. But we're running a Substitute Icy Wind Defog Grass Knot set. Why Substitute? I honestly couldn't tell you. Perhaps it's to chase somebody out. I don't remember much past like a day. Maybe even don't remember much past an hour. And this battle was weeks, if not months ago. So can't tell you. My own mind is a puzzle to me. And putting back the pieces would take much longer than I have time for. But we're bringing Icy Wind because it can smack that Garchomp and also manage its speed if we're seeing a scale shoddy kind of matchup here. And it also helps deal with the Iron Boulder's speed. You can undo like the booster energy and allow Mesprit to outspeed it. Also, if you take a look back at Mesprit was running full attack EVs, which is not a mistake. It legitimately is running 252 plus attack in this week, so we don't talk about that. Grass Knot and Defog are just here to help with the 18 billion ground and rock types that are on this team. I'm not even going to bother to list them because I'm going to get a carpal tunnel with all the copying, pasting, and moving around the mons. So that's what it's there for. Tornadus T rounds out my team of 6 to go up against the Oak Ridge Okie Dogies. And without further ado, we're going to get right on into the replay. Without any further ado, let's get right on into this replay. This is an absolute heater, one of my favorites of this season for both teams. It's not just a one-sided smash-along. This is a battle of will and wits and everything in between. We've got what you can see on that enemy team here. We got Alolan Marowak, Indeedee, Lunarigus, Low Kicks, Iron Boulder, and Vivillon. I'm saying that like you can't see, but you should open your eyes if you haven't yet, because this is about to be real. Most of the things that I was super worried about, mainly Iron Boulder and Low Kicks, are both here, and you know what? I'm feeling good. I'm feeling prepared. We're gonna get right on into this bad Mammo Jamma. Low Kicks starting out now into Mesprit is just not good. We want to get rocks up here, but the threat of like banded first impression is horrifying because it's gonna outspeed my Scarf and perhaps KO me. I forget what the actual count is. I think it actually is. Or actually it might. I don't know. Regardless, we see a trick come out, so we take the band for the Scarf, and now this is like a massive butterfly effect, or more of a Low Kicks fly effect, if you would. This will have big implications later. Remember this one. Regardless, Low Kicks has a Scarf now. Indeedee comes out. We're banded, so we don't outspeed, and we just get shot to death, even on the resist. Hoopa comes out, and then I decide to hard swap. Why I decide to hard swap is perhaps because I remember that this thing is part normal type. Perhaps for some other reason, but Groggy Gary, the poor guy, gets sent out into that Specs. I'm spoiling it. It's a Specs Indeedee expanding force on top of Psychic Terrain. That thing is a gunshot through the head. There ain't no good walking away from that. especially if you're not a resist or an immunity. Hoopa comes back out after nothing of value was gained there. A Terra Blast. Now, this is funny because this is a non-Terra Terra Blast, but this was legitimately the best play for me because I wanted to keep my Psychic resist by not Terraing. Because if I Terra'd, that Expanding Force would have done double, would have done 44, and I'd be at like a measly 6% here. Be no good. Another Expanding Force giving me my Slackberry boost, so I hit it with a Terra Blast and steal the Choice Specs. Now, I didn't even notice this in the game because I'm so used to Hoopa's Magician not really being a factor on account of having a Scarf or what have you, something that doesn't go away. But the ways that the choice items work is that the next move I make, now that I have them, not the move that's stolen, but the move after, will lock me in. And I'm not paying attention to this. Or not paying attention, but I just missed this little memo. And I got so lucky in my not noticing, because now that Psychic Terrain is down, it's really feasible, especially with being outsped, that this Indeedee swaps out. We do get the Indeedee swapping out, and we Hidden Power Water into Gainsborough, the Runerigas here, hitting it for an immense 69%. This thing is going to just get outsped and die, and anything else on the field is going to have to take a really nasty hit. This Hoop is actually really poised for success here. So we see the sack here, where the Runerigas is just gone. Low kick's coming out, presumably for first impressions, so I hard swap to keep Hoopa around for later. Seems more useful to me alive even after its speed boost is gone. I mean, now we just have a Specs Hoopa, and I believe base Marowak here, Marowak's base speed gets decently outsped. So, presumably there's still a use case for this Specs in one-shotting that little Marowak. But we've got the first impression bugs face-to-face here. The U-turn comes out, chunking a gnarly 36%. That tinted lens, of course, coming in clutch. You don't like seeing Indeedee here, because that's a dead Slitherwing, even with the Papaya Berry, I want to say. But we hard swap into Stack Attack and take that Expanding Force not as nicely as we'd like to. A Mystical Fire dropping our special attack. But we secure the Heavy Slam kill, and we get that Beast Boost. Thank you, Ernest Hemingway. Now, we get Flame Charged here. We're not outspeeding in any sense of the word. Stack Attack speed is 13 as a base stat. You're just not outspeeding anything on the other side. But it still starts positioning this Marowak against a Stack Attacker that honestly can't do all too much because we're not running rock or ground type attacks on the side. So we take a gnarly Flame Charge, we're hitting it with a Resistor. We get this rest off back to full, but it's a little worrying if this thing can just Flame Charge. Now, we didn't Terra Flying here because we didn't assume the ground type attack was coming in. It does get Bone Meringue because of its Cantonian cousin. But seeing that it wasn't just going for the KO immediately, I assumed it didn't have a ground type attack, and I was sorely mistaken. I was just taking that nice opportunity to start setting up for the future. Investment banking out of Coach Claire here. You gotta respect it. The resists not going with Terra Flying here, expecting another Bone Meringue, and Claire gets a beautiful read by going for that Flare Blitz here. Solid 28%, barely hanging on because of that Beast Boost. That Beast Boost kill on Indeedee is making a world of change here in Mr. Hemingway just not being a pile of bricks and remaining a tower for now. Another Flame Charge to secure the kill. Now, this double speed, even off a tiny little base stat, is getting pretty fast. Like, this is getting moving, especially where none of my guys have a way to necessarily boost their speed anymore now that Hoopa's Slackberry is gone. And this thing quad resists first impression, so I'm not getting cryo off on it. That means much. Down goes Stack Attack. In comes James Joyce, the Ogre Pawn. That Shadowbone whipping Stomping Tantrum, luckily saving the day. Low kicks coming in for the presumable first impression just to pick me off. Neutral is going to do more than enough, even with the Scarf instead of the band. We Spiky Shield and get some chip on a U-turn. which we like to see. We deny a little bit of momentum and gain a little bit of information because we know this thing has to U-turn. And now we're in an interesting position because if Iron Boulder comes out, or even Pavilion for that matter, and gets a turn to move, Iron Boulder here in particular is worrisome because it outspeeds Ogerpon here. It even might have a turn set up, but it could, if not played around correctly, just absolutely sweep my entire team. My only out is being able to position myself so that I can get Slitherwing to first impression a non-sashed Iron Boulder. That is the wind condition here. So, how do you go about this? We've got Hoopa, who's near dead, and 2 really hurt mons. Slitherwing's hanging out at around half-ish? 64. We sack the Hoopa to the U-turn. Now, either one here that comes out, I have an answer for. If Pavilion comes out, we go Ogerpon, and we hope to God it's not sufficient. But my win is contingent on neither of these having a sash here. But if Pavilion comes out here, we get switched Prio and take Ogerpon into an Ivy Cudgel. If Iron Boulder comes out, we have to bring Slitherwing out and go for the first impression, and then perhaps hard swap into Ogerpon or something. If Boulder comes out here, we're not happy, just because it completely bars Ogerpon from coming in. Pavilion luckily comes out, so we do send out Ogerpon. Now, Ivy Cudgel deletes this thing back to the Shadow Realm, but if it's Sash, it just hits like Sash, and it can even start setting up. Can't Sleep Powder me because I'm a Grass type, but it's not necessarily a good look. We literally have to one-shot it, and thank God there's no Sash here. If this was a Sash, Juno probably would have ended my entire career. And now it goes down, we're feeling okay. Low Kicks is here. Now, we Spiky Shield just to see what it wants to use. It wants to U-turn again. And we decide to let it go. Now, Iron Boulder is forced to be out here because we sacked Ogerpon here. Which means that no matter what, one of these 2 mons on the opponent's team is dying. They're both weak to first impression. They're both going to get deleted by Slitherwing's first impression here. The tougher play is getting hit by Iron Boulder's Psychic-type Zen Headbutt, because we can presumably kill it with a Leech Life, or sorry, a U-turn, maybe. Absolutely can kill it with a first impression. But in the scenario where we don't get the first impression off on Iron Boulder, we are in a scary position, even still holding on to that Papaya Berry to resist this. So we really need this to go down. And we do get it. It is dead. And now we got the 2 first impression bugs looking at each other again. High Wind and Kafka. A battle of the centuries here. Now, if this Low Kicks was still banded, this would be game right here. But because of that little butterfly effect earlier, that Low Kicks' U-turn into this thing named the Wing of Slither was weakened, and this next attack is weakened and resisted if it's stabbed, which is lovely. So, it allows Mr. Kafka to live that knockoff, we lose the Papaya Berry, and we U-turn for the dub. It was a absolute beautiful bug v bug kind of scenario there. Honestly, the most ideal and poetic way to win or end this matchup. First impression bug versus first impression bug. Gen 9 bug power creep versus Gen 9 bug power creep. The scales were balanced and they tipped just ever so slightly in my favor. Claire, Coach Claire, beautiful team. Thank you for the beautiful match. We're, as you said, currently 1-1, so if I see you in the tourney or see you in Season 3, I'm looking forward to another beautiful fight. For now, though, that's all I got for you. Take care. Make sure you floss tonight. I know you've been slacking, but you take some of that floss that the dentist gave you. Get in between your teeth. Thank you.